I'm Naufal. I'm the founder and president of QueerTech. I always look around and I see a lot of, who's your first time to a QueerTech event? Raise your hand. Oh, sweet. Good, we always have new people. It's really amazing because we started this, and some of you might have heard the story, but today or this month is QueerTech third year anniversary. So really amazing. I actually remember 3 years ago, I was standing on this stage and I was terrified because I organized this event and I was like, I don't know if people are gonna show up. I started this meetup group and I was like, maybe they're gonna be like 10 of us and we're gonna chat. And it was amazing. There were 100 people who joined the meetup group after like a month. And so they were asking to do an event. So we decided to host the event and 50 people showed up to hear. So it was really exciting to see the community. You know, back then we really wanted to just create a community group, right? Bring in people who are queer and want to be in, or who are in tech or want to get into tech and come and learn a little bit more. 3 years forward, we've been doing so many events, building the community. We have about 2,100 members on Meetup Group right now. It's really, really amazing. Thank you. So it's like, I'm always like, who the hell are all these 2,000 people? Is it even 2,000 queer people in Montreal that are in tech? I don't know, but we can start like a little island. But this is great. This is great because we really believe that like what we want to be doing is queering the shit out of the tech community. And so I'm really excited to see more and more of you coming to these events, talking about the events. And these events would never, you know, be, they never really happen if we didn't have our partners and sponsors who really support this event so we can keep them free of charge for the community. Tonight, it's really exciting to have 3 organizations that we collaborate with. Shopify, who's hosting us tonight. We've been partners with them for the last 3 years, done so many activities. Thank you, Shopify, for having us. And I'm gonna ask Boliko to come here soon. And then as well, another organization that this is the first time we partner with them, and maybe some of you have heard of them. It's Bonjour Startup Montreal, and Elizabeth is here. She'll tell you more. Thank you for sponsoring the event and partner with us. You'll get to learn a little bit more about what they do in a second. And the third convention and last one but not least, it's a company that's really close to my heart. I know them as well for 3 years. It's LightHouse Labs. It's really an amazing company that's been educating so many people to learn how to code and get jobs in the tech industry. So thank you again for collaborating with us. We're really excited to hear what they have to say as well about their programs, and hopefully get you guys excited to do some coding in the future. So without further ado, because we want to really hear more content, I'm gonna ask Boliko, do you want to come here and say something about Shopify? Who have never heard about Shopify? Raise your hand. Okay. Whew. Thank God. I was like, you have to know at least what Shopify does. But here, Boliko will tell us a little bit more.
Bonjour, hi, and welcome to Shopify. Before I continue, I'd just like to acknowledge that Shopify, the land on which we gather today, is the traditional and unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation, who are the traditional custodians of these lands and waters. And it has historically been a meeting place for Indigenous folks, and today is open to both the Indigenous community as well as other diverse communities across the city. So welcome to Shopify. My name is Boliko. I'm a social impact manager here at Shopify. I focus specifically to work with marginalized entrepreneurs. I'm currently focusing on underrepresented youth, but I also work with racialized groups as well as a queer community. Today's event, I worked very closely with our Out at Shopify employee resource group. So to find folks at the back here, if you have questions about Shopify and our amazing employee resource group, you can talk to them. And if you're interested in entrepreneurship, if you have questions about starting a business, or you're from an organization and know a really cool organization that could use some support, come find me. We're happy to help. Thank you.
Sweet. I love this lighting, but I feel like I'm tanning in here. It's so hot. um, great. I'm going to ask our second supporter, collaborator, partner. I'll let Elizabeth let you talk.
Bonsoir, bonsoir. I thank you for your time. Thank you for having us. I didn't bring my banner because I just want to be like with the community and with like real about what we're doing and why we are here in Montreal. So, ça fait à peu près 1 an qu'on existe pour Bonjour Startup Montréal. La première fois que je suis arrivée au bureau, j'ai fait Bonjour, hi. Elles ne m'ont pas trouvé drôle. Mais bon, donc l'idée de Bonjour Startup Montréal, c'est de regrouper l'écosystème startup, donc de toutes les communautés, tous les joueurs de l'écosystème, les regrouper ensemble pour mieux se représenter à l'international. Et puis, c'est aussi de regrouper la start-up à savoir qu'est-ce qu'elles ont besoin pour réussir et aussi comment est-ce qu'on peut les appuyer, non seulement pour la réussite de leur start-up, mais aussi pour l'écosystème. Donc, moi, personnellement, qui est une entrepreneur, maybe I will, maybe I won't have my own startup, but at some point I'm really interested to be working with that ecosystem because it's chill, it's fun, it's also, we can learn a lot of things without having the corporate pressure. So we have a lot of, not a lot, but right now we are looking for 2 positions right now in Bonjour Startup Montréal. But also in the community, I know that there's a lot of people who's looking for people in tech or other things as well. So just for fun, how many people are looking for a job right now? How many people are in tech? So that's great, that's a lot of people. And how many people are not in tech and still looking for a job? And that's great as well. So right now, in Bonjour Startup, on cherche 2 postes à combler en communication, donc directeur aux communications, et aussi conseillère ou conseiller en communication, ou pas de genre aussi, c'est correct, on prend tout le monde. Donc voilà, alors si vous voulez, vous pouvez nous suivre sur notre Slack. Donc sur Slack, sur bonjourstartup.mtl.ca/Slack, vous allez pouvoir voir les offres d'emploi à ce sujet. Est-ce qu'il y en a encore des questions? Non? Parfait. On continue. De toute façon, c'est les autres qu'on est venus écouter. Merci beaucoup. Merci encore. Puis bonsoir. Bonsoir, Startup Montréal.
Again, I always felt de faire ça en français, en anglais. Mais si vous avez des questions pendant l'événement en français, n'hésitez pas à les poser aussi. Il y a toujours du monde qui pourrait traduire les questions, so n'hésitez pas. Few things before we get started, why we choose to do this event. One of the missions that we've been mandated and talked with the community for the last couple of years of really getting a clear sense of where we want to head as an organization. One thing that came up a lot from our community is that people are looking for a space not only to be entrepreneurs, but as well as space to get into tech, and people see there is a lot of barriers, right? When you're not in the industry, it might look really challenging to, where do you even start to apply for a job? And when we talk about coding and mathematics and logic and all that, it's really scary, right? And a lot of people find it a little bit intimidating to do. And so as we look at organizing these events, one of our goals really for the upcoming year is that we're looking, as I mentioned, we want to queer the tech community. We want more and more queer people to apply for tech jobs. And that's either for, programmer jobs or even for other jobs, right? Marketing, HR, admin. There is so many opportunities that are coming. Montreal is a tech hub. We are third, if not the second largest tech hub in Canada after Waterloo and Toronto. We are in the top 10 largest tech hubs in the world. AI is becoming really big in Montreal. There is more and more companies who are opening their centers here, and there's Google, Facebook, Samsung. They've all announced to have their headquarters for AI and AI research here. And so we feel that we are in an amazing position to really help people understand what does that mean for the community, and how can you apply for these tech jobs. So the goal is to break down the barriers, and this event is going to be one of the events that we're going to be doing that. We're launching as well our job board that we are hoping to finalize this quarter and get a lot more companies on it, so people can really find companies who are inclusive, who are diverse, who are really looking to create, who have their employees really feel that they belong to that environment. So it's going to be, we're working on 2020 right now, and it's really exciting to look at all the plan that we're doing. So we're going to be focusing a lot on recruitment and equipping the community with either to do job interviews, looking at doing a job fair next year, but also we have Pride Hacks, which has been an amazing opportunity to give back to the community, but as well give the opportunity for people who don't have a lot of coding experience to come and learn and contribute to the community. So stay tuned. You're going to see a lot of events coming up. So let's jump into it. So when we were again hosting this event, I talk to people, and if you're like, I'm not a coder, I've been in tech for 10 years, but I don't code, I don't understand C++ and Python and JavaScript and all the language. I love watching our program, and it's because their screen is black, but it's very colorful too, and it's the extent of my coded skills is watching them pick all the colors, the purple and the pink. So it's great. I feel like coding was made for the queer community, because you can really have a lot of fun. When we were hosting, I remember a few months ago, I was looking online and I came across a video of Anna Lytical, and I was like, who is this person? And so I started looking on YouTube, and one thing that I loved is like finding other community members who are thinking the same way. They're thinking, how can we help the community to understand tech? Right? And how can we simplify it a little bit more for people to understand what does it mean to code and how do you code, right? And so since then, I really loved been watching their videos, and we're really excited to have Anna Lytical, who came from New York today to come in and talk to us why she started the YouTube channels and talk about and talk a little bit about the goals that are behind that. So I was like, this is amazing. I find really good speakers to come in, and then we're partnering with LightHouse Lab, and we're gonna have some amazing people who are gonna come later on the panel to talk about their experience. But then I was like, someone amazing should moderate this. And so I remember a few months ago, we hosted an event, and Eddie was part of that panel. It was about, if you guys remember, it was early this year, maybe in April, and it was talking about the importance of pronouns and what does it mean in the workplace, and really how we educate people. And one story that I remember from Eddie is they said that they learned how to code on their own. They stayed at home, they learned online, and today they build websites, and half of their time is professionally is working in tech. And I find that really amazing and inspiring, because it's really hard to sit yourself down on your own and learn something these days, right? Facebook and Twitter, and you get distracted with so many things. So it takes a lot of discipline to be willing to do that. Eddie is a queer, non-binary entrepreneur. They work as well in conflict resolutions. They have a company that they manage, EGH, conflict mediations. They also do coaching. They do consulting and training, and really great to look at them very involved in the community. So without further ado, I'm going to be inviting our speaker for the night and our moderator. So the structure we're gonna do a fire chat for a little bit, and this is your opportunity to ask all the burning questions you have for Analytical, and then we will invite the rest of the panel to join to talk to you more about their experience at LightHouse Lab. Sweet. Welcome the speaker and moderator. Woohoo!
So thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to be your moderator tonight. I'm also a bit nervous because I've never done this for QueerTech before, so this is very exciting.
I've never done this either, so...
Can we give them a huge round of applause? Show them all the love.
So, like what was stated, we're here tonight to talk a little bit about barriers in the tech industry for the LGBT community, but also to look at like what access is available out there. So like what people are doing to kind of get rid of those barriers or reduce those barriers. So just in case, I just want to make sure we have a shared vocabulary going on in case anyone doesn't know what the acronym LGBT stands for. It's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. I also love to add an I in there for intersex, and I also love to add a 2S in there for two-spirit. It is ever evolving, and there's probably other
the Q for queer, you know.
Oh my God, I forgot the Q. Oh my God.
Literally at QueerTech.
I literally forgot the Q.
All right, we need a new moderator. Next.
Oh my God, what a start. So let's start off by introducing our special guest, Analytical, everybody. Welcome, Anna.
Hi.
So you work at Google by day, yes?
Yeah.
Very cool. You want to tell us a little bit about, like, you by day and you by night? I don't know, right? Like,
Yeah, it's like, when am I really recording these videos? Definitely by day. I am at Google. I work on the developer relations team for the cloud platform, and I've been at Google for 4 years. And I started out as an engineer, and I really liked that. I learned a ton. I had really great mentors. And then I was like, I want to connect with customers and like solve their problems and try like build up this empathy that I'd kind of been growing for all these people using our cloud products. I was like, I'm building these things. I have no idea how they're using them. And this role in developer relations opened up, and I've gotten to do just that. I get to talk to customers about how they're using one of our cloud products called Bigtable, and I just try to figure out what's going wrong with it and make it better, or write a sample application for it, or write documentation. And I love doing that. I feel like I'm really helping people out.
that's very cool.
And then by night, it's kind of like weekends, evenings, whenever there's free time. I make these videos teaching different kinds of coding or things related to tech. And I'm in drag for like 90% of the videos. Sometimes I just got to get something out. I started out kind of doing just like intro web development, some HTML, CSS. Then when RuPaul's Drag Race started out, I was like, oh, maybe I can steal some people from the Reddit Drag Race community and just make as ridiculous meme websites as I could. Just like click around, get funny sound, make some soundboards. And I just posted them there, and people were really engaged with that. It was kind of like the web in like the 2000s, where like there was like a soundboard, every website was like a little janky, but it felt like you could really do something or build something quickly. So I was like, okay, here's a 10-minute video showing you how to make a soundboard. Just download some of these files or even start from scratch. Bam, make a soundboard for your like favorite pop icon. Or like, bam, make like a website where your mouse turns into like a drag queen and they like make funny sounds. And that was just kind of like a fun way to start getting people involved. And then lately I've been kind of doing a more structured intro to computer science series. I figured like that's something that like there are so many people trying to do intro to computer science, and that's kind of a great way to take the next steps to being, I want to be a developer, I want to get a job in tech, how can I learn computer science? And while there are amazing options out there, if you're kind of like in that math mindset or already like learning a bit, I found a lot of them to be like really dull. And I was like, let me take drag and like make these videos really fun, use fun examples, use like a lot of energy and just kind of follow like YouTube meme culture, like bam, 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 quick editing, like just getting out the content, watch it 2 times speed if you want to. So yeah, that's kind of like where everything is now.
And
That's a lot. It's like I'm living like 3 lives. It's a lot.
I mean, I have to say, I'm somebody who learned coding primarily through videos. And I watched some of yours when I got asked to do this. And I have to say, yours were definitely a lot more exciting and engaging than the
Thanks
ones
for the views.
that I was watching. Definitely more entertaining, and I really appreciated that. And I actually did want to ask you, like, you know, how did you come up with Anna, and like why did you decide to use drag? Like, you did mention a little bit that you wanted to like make it more exciting, and so you picked this like drag element. But was there like any other reason why you chose specifically Anna and like specifically drag?
Yeah, so I started doing drag about like 2 years ago. I was kind of like, I'm living in New York City. I was kind of feeling like have this great job at Google. I have like all these friends, but I felt like there was something missing. And in high school and in college, I did a lot of performing and went to a lot of theater and was like, I want to find a way like I can express myself and kind of like have this creative outlet. I was also like, I should probably watch some pop culture to talk about it with all the other gay people that are around my life. So I was like, all right, I'll get back into Drag Race. And I watched like a season. Again, I'd seen a few seasons at the start, and I was just like, oh, this is what I should be doing. This is like a thing that I can connect with and bring whatever I want to. I don't have to do like lip syncs. I can go and do like stand-up comedy, or I could bring like slam poetry in, or I could just bring anything in. And in the end, I bring tech. It's like there are no rules with drag. And I didn't want to have to go join some like big chorus, have like 3 meetings a week, or join some production, some play, and try to fit that into my schedule. It was like, drag, it's on my time, and I get to do it the way I want and express myself the way I want, even if it's like a little bit of a mess sometimes. And scroll down my Instagram and you will see the mess. But I had fun with it. I really had like a great time being creative that way. And then I would try to bring some kind of science or tech into that a little bit. Like one time I made this dress that had like bags of baking soda and vinegar in them. So I would like take off a belt and then it would kind of inflate. It didn't work so well, but like the idea was spot on. I tried to do that to like a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory of Violet Beauregard. Violet, you're turning violet. So like I tried to bring these things in, but I still felt like, okay, I'm being creative. This is taking up hours and hours of my time. I need to slow down. And I also felt like compared to the other queens that were performing, it's like one of my drag sisters, Jasmine Kennedy, will literally do backflips and stilettos in like this much room. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to gag people at a dive bar on a Monday night at like midnight with like, I don't know, whatever I was putting together. So I kind of took a pause, and it kind of I kept thinking about it in my mind. I kept playing with makeup because I got that out of drag. I was like, oh, makeup's so fun. That's not something I had kind of dabbled with before. And then joining this new team, actually, I was inspired by a lot of the people on my team who created a ton of content. So one person on my team, Franzi Hinkelman, hey Franzi, shout out. She would do live streams on Twitch doing like Google coding interviews on Saturdays. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And it's like, oh, you're just doing that. And it was kind of like, oh, that's something I could do. I could do that same thing, or I could do some tech videos or something. Because I saw these people on my team doing that, and it was like, oh, how do I make it different? How do I bring the thing that's unique to me there? And I think Drag Race might have been starting again, and it just all kind of came together, and I was like, oh, light bulb, it's all there. And then bam, 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 analytical. I'm here to teach you code. Long-winded, but that's where we are.
And is that also why you chose to go with like a YouTube, like with YouTube as your online platform, like rather than making like a course, like an online course, or like teaching like an in-person workshop?
Yeah, it's like YouTube. I like grew up watching YouTube videos and was like, oh, I can just make my own. I made like a YouTube channel when I was 13. I cannot find any of the videos anymore. But it's just so accessible. It's like anyone can do it. It's like I need my phone and iMovie, and I can just edit it together, and there it is. There it's existing. I don't need to coordinate with a bunch of people to create a course or kind of deal with just all these logistics. I was just kind of like, I have this idea. I want to put it out there and get some feedback with it. And I feel like that's a big theme in tech. It's like, get your MVP out. Just like put something out there if you have this idea. See how people react to it. And I saw like, oh, this is something that people are engaging with. How can I keep going with it? How can I push it in the way that they want to see, or that who's engaging with it? How can I push them to engage further? How can I like make them code? Or how can I like get them to watch this video about code or tech or UX or design or writing, all these things?
And like, what responses have you been getting? Like, what have people been reaching out to you? Yeah, like what have people been saying about the videos that you're making?
Mm-hmm. So it kind of like bubbled up. So when I like put out my first video, I sent it to the Gayglers mailing list, which is Google's LGBT Q plus, all the other letters you added, group. So I sent it there in February, and someone saw that who runs like a New York City wide Google mailing list. They sent it in there, and then someone who runs the Google external blog saw it and was like, let's do a story about this for Pride. So that's kind of like put me on the map a little bit, the story that Google did. Because they also tweeted it. And Google has like the 5th most amount of followers in the world. So I was like, well, that was a day. My phone, the notifications really blew up. But it was just so cool. I was like, oh, Google just showed 21 million people that you can be a software engineer at Google and be a drag queen. And I was like, bam, there's the message. I can quit now. And then Business
Free
Insider
advertising.
kind of did a story following up on that a little bit. But I think really what's been the most impactful is like the community I found on Twitter. There are so many amazing and diverse people in tech on Twitter. And they all just want to connect and support each other and share their interesting projects. Someone awesome I've gotten to meet and to chat with a lot is Chloe Condon, and she has this like fake boyfriend app where she has like an IoT button, she pushes it, and she gets a call from like a boyfriend, and it'll like talk to her so she can like get out of a sticky situation. And she like goes around the country doing like courses on this.
That's amazing. I love that. I think we all need that.
Yeah. And I'm just like, there are so many amazing people doing so many like different cool things, and by putting out this thing that I'm doing, and that I was like, this is kind of me, this is like, it's like me to the extreme, I guess. I mean, that's not what you're a bet in. but just to put myself out there and then to see, oh, there are all these other people putting themselves out there, bringing their unique part to tech and doing some awesome stuff with that.
Yeah, and you know, when I was watching your videos, definitely like the first thing that popped into my head was like this idea of representation. And you know, when I started learning to code, I was like new to Montreal. I didn't really know anyone. I think this is probably still when QueerTech had like 10 people coming to their meetups, because I remember I found QueerTech and then I tried to go to a meeting and I couldn't find the building and I like got locked out and whatever, and it was like a huge big thing. But yeah, it was like about 3 years ago. And it was so hard to find like other people who were doing it, and it was like a very definitely like lonely and like isolating kind of process, just like spending a lot of time alone at the library with my e-course. And also just even finding people online who are teaching these courses that are queer, right? Like I just feel like that's something that LGBT people are always dealing with, like this lack of representation, like online, but also in the classroom, like the way things are taught to us and also like who's teaching it. And I really, really liked that, like about your videos, like the queerness of the videos, the gender nonconformity, like in the videos, made me instantly more engaged, like as a queer person. And for my job, I do a lot of like equity work with organizations who are having like inclusion and diversity problems, and like I always tell them that like you could wave like 20 rainbow flags and you can like do a training, but if there's not representation like in your organization or in your company, none of it matters, because people don't see themselves there or even in the content that like is being created. So, and you actually say something in I think one of the first videos that you made, and you say, if we do not take part in building the technology around us, then we will not be represented in it. And like that definitely like really spoke to me, and I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit more about that, like why representation is so important, and if you could also maybe provide some examples of like what you mean by that.
I mean, that quote, like, if we do not take part in building the technology around us, we won't be represented in it. It's about we. It's not just me or you. It's everybody should kind of feel like they see someone that represents at least part of themselves. I can't represent everybody. I mean, outside of this, I'm just a white guy, like, walking around. I have so much privilege, and I don't want to claim to represent everybody, but by representing maybe a queer person or a gay person or a drag queen or a gender nonconforming person, I can at least target people who might not see themselves already, and they can see, oh, there's that piece of me that I see in this person. Then they can look to me as someone, as a mentor or someone to look up to. With regards to why representation is important, there are just so many aspects of each of our lives that we can't understand about each other. And one thing I talk about is like a gender form, where you're not going to get your gender representation might not be listed correctly, or Kara Swisher was just talking about this. She filled out like a form for a hospital where she just had a child, and it lists like mother and father, and it's like she's a lesbian. There's two mothers. She's not putting her name on the father field, and it goes beyond LGBTQ issues. There are so many issues. Another thing I see is like I have a chronic illness, so the way I get my medicine is I fill out this super long form on like a medical app that's really buggy. I have to like enter in a ton of information, and then they'll send me like a huge box like up to here with something that's like this big in it. And I'm like, clearly no one who built this app has had to go through the same issue. It's like, yeah, I can live with it, but it's like we're wasting like a huge box, a ton of styrofoam, and just like my time. Like, I don't want to have to fill out this form. And it's like, already it's like, you just get angry. And there are so many ways for us to just, even if we have the language to talk about, oh, this form, maybe they should autocomplete these properties every time if they're always gonna be the same. And just the time that could save the person and make them feel, oh, this was made to make it easy, not to make it hard.
Yeah. I'm like, I can think of many. I feel like this is me every time I try to go on any City of Montreal website, you know? And I'm just like, when was this built? When was this last looked at? You know, just like so many bugs. Or like when I try to go on like the municipal library website and like can't log in and it like refuses to ever remember my password or my card number.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, that's annoying. But then when you think about ways where like LGBTQ people can encounter these issues, and it's not only frustrating, it's almost saying like, oh, the way you're living isn't valid. It's a mother and father, not mother and mother, parent one, parent two. So it really goes, with some of these issues, it can go beyond just frustration. It can really be getting at like, it's just like one more thing that's like, oh, we didn't think about this. We didn't like consider you.
And can like be an actual, like a physical barrier for many, right? Like if people cannot complete something, or if like they cannot use an app as it is intended to be used, right? Then they can't use the potential service that they're trying to get.
Yeah. Another thing you kind of spoke about was representation in the classroom. And I learned computer science in high school. I kind of did a class, but most of it was like being taught in the closet of like the computer science teacher. It was just like me and him one-on-one. And I was very grateful to kind of have someone who would sit down and like work on something with me. But it's just like the people I saw, like I was like, oh, I don't know if I like fit in with them. I don't know if I want to like be a person who's always coding, or kind of like self-hating nerdism almost. So I think that's something where it's like, oh, if you see your friend taking that computer science class, you're like, oh, maybe I'll take it with them so I can just have a buddy in there. It's like always something I've heard, oh, I should take computer science and I can do it with my friend, rather than just all the other people who you don't feel like you connect with.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to like a question, and a thought that I had, like as somebody who is self-taught, I did have a mentor for 2 years that I got paired up with, like a local mentor, and he was amazing, and I still bug him when I like can't figure something out. But you know, one of the great things that I noticed is that there's so much open source information. Like you can just like Google anything and you can find an answer to anything. You can find a free resource, and that's awesome. And I think that has to do a lot with the fact that like people in programming are kind of always learning, because everything is changing so fast. The languages are changing, the syntax is changing, like everyone's always like having to do this. But there's also a lot of opinions about who's like a real developer. And I always see these on these like Reddit threads, or also on Facebook. Horrible place to read the comments of anything, but just like a lot of people who I'm perceiving, like, so again, I'm making an assumption here, but I'm perceiving them as men online, being like, no, the only people who are real developers are people who have like these computer science degrees, people who go to boot camps, not real. Self-taught, not real. They have a lot of really strong feelings about this. And the thing that's really funny is that I know a lot of trans people specifically, and actually specifically trans women, who did go into computer science and had to drop out of their programs because of all of the transphobia, transmisogyny, racism, like if they were like a trans person of color, like all of the shit that they had to experience in their programs that they actually had to drop out. And so I thought it was really funny that like these people are phrasing it like these alternatives are like, you know, not real, but the reality is that these like alternatives for some are like the only option. Like to be self-taught is the only option, or to like go to a boot camp is the only option for like potentially safety reasons. And so I want to know your feelings about that as somebody who did computer science. And are these people just trolls and we should ignore them? Is there actually like a place in tech like for people who are self-taught? Like, can we find jobs? Like, can you set the record straight? What do you think?
Yeah, so I was one of these people. I mean, I wasn't so adamant about it, but I was like, I do my traditional computer science like degree, and I was like, oh, those like boot camp babies, like they don't know what they're talking about. But my mind has totally changed, and I think all of those people you're talking about, I think their mind could easily be changed. I think part of it was getting to work with amazing engineers who came from coding boot camps or were self-taught, and getting to see, oh, there are people I'm working right beside that are equally as competent, if not more competent, and they didn't have the same background as me, and that's totally fine. I also think, like, of being in the industry for 4 years, I look back on what courses I did in my degree and what am I actually using, and it's like, I used like 3.5 courses. In my years of college, I was like, oh, like, to be an engineer, like, does not require a computer science degree. Let me say that again. To be a real engineer does not require a computer science degree. I think another aspect of this is like front end versus back end. And for my first 3 years at Google, I was a front end engineer. And I like definitely felt that there's like this stigma towards front end engineering, which comes from like the exact same place. And the stuff I was doing as a front end engineer was highly complex, and I had to deal with all the back-end engineers who didn't think about it and have to figure out ways to finagle around to actually make everything work the way a user would expect it.
I love that.
I think just talking to those people and figuring out like why they think that, I think maybe different boot camps, they aren't going to go into as much of the computer science, but that doesn't really matter if you're just trying to like be an engineer day to day. Like, when am I using Boolean logic? Like, when am I doing like matrix algebra? I mean, it comes up if you're doing machine learning and all these things, but that's only like 10% of engineers, I feel. It's like, there's a reason why machine learning specialists are paid so well. It's because not everyone knows how to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I really, like I've noticed a lot of that stigma too. And I hope that we can all do our part in trying to dismantle that. Because first of all, I think that alternative ways of learning is totally fine. Like, why do we all have to go to university and get a degree? Like, who set that standard? Why is that? Like, you know, I get it. For many people, that's what they want to do. But for many people, that's not an option. And it's not an option for a variety of reasons, whether it's like financial or whether it's like for safety reasons, or you just like, you know, you're taking care of loved ones or whoever, and you just can't go to school full time or whatever. So I really wish people would, like kind of move their way of thinking into like understanding that there's a whole bunch of complex reasons why people choose not to go to school to learn programming. It looked like you were gonna say something. You're just like,
that's totally right.
So I know we want to get to the Q&A, so I'm gonna ask you just a couple more questions. So I think it's safe to say that there is a little bit of a diversity problem in the tech world. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's funny because I feel like I'm on a fairly diverse team, even though like I definitely think there are ways it could be more diverse, but like the teams I've been on at Google have been like 50% women or something. So at least like with gender and like sexuality, I've felt I've been in fairly diverse places. And I did an internship at a startup that was also like very diverse as well, and was like 6 people. I'll let you finish your question though.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, you're welcome to elaborate on the type of diversity problems that you've been seeing or that you've been witnessing. I would be interested in knowing that. But also, you know, what can allies be doing, right, to break down some of these barriers, whether like on an individual level, like coworkers, or actual like companies and businesses.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like, don't ask the white guy for advice on diversity. Like, ask the people who are feeling affected by these things, and like, we don't want to put the onus on them to have to come up with the solutions, but I think coming up with trainings that can get people involved and to have people aware of like what. I think the first step is like awareness. It's like, what are your biases that are kind of like subconscious? What kind of are these things that people are experiencing? And then just like examples, I think that just makes things so much more clear. Like when I think about something that like women in tech I've like heard face, it's like, oh, like they're not getting invited to the meetings. It's like, now that I've heard that some women in tech are like, oh, I'm not getting invited to the meetings, it's like, these are people I've worked with, or like former coworkers have told me this on different teams, and I'm like, wait, that's ridiculous. It's like, you're like a team of 10 engineers, like why aren't you invited to the meeting? So that's something I'm always think about, like, is everyone who's relevant invited to the meeting? It's kind of like, you have to know what the issues are and how people are feeling in order to take the first steps towards it. And then part of that is also just education. It's like, we need to make sure that there are the right, like a diverse set of people in the pipeline, learning to code and feeling like when they get to a place where each stage of learning to code, they should make sure they feel they are supported, are being heard, and when they get to work, they should make sure that they are feeling supported and respected and heard and have a safe environment to work in.
Yeah, I agree, and I really like what you said about, like, you know, who's in decision-making positions, right? Like, I think a lot of the time what I end up seeing is that people want like diversity and inclusion, but then when you look at who's making all of the actual decisions, the people that need to be in those meetings are not there, right? Like, that's where like the white guys are sitting in there. Maybe there's a white woman too, I don't know. They're probably all cisgender, that's my guess. Like, those are the people that are then in there like making the decisions, and often the decisions about diversity too, which I'm just like, why? And I get what you said, like, you don't want the onus to be on the marginalized people to be telling you exactly what to do. But I'm sure, you know, you can invite people to the meetings and they can make the choice themselves of like whether or not, you know, they want to be there and how much they want to, like, how much energy they want to exert in sharing information. And I also think there's a difference between asking people for their input because you sincerely want it. You're like, we want you to be part of this like decision, versus we want you to sit here and teach us what we're doing wrong and how to fix it, you know? So finally, my last question for you is, are there any cool projects that are being done by like LGBTQ people that you want to tell us about, or any like people, like developers, engineers, like people that you think we should know about, that we should look up?
Sure. I mean, I mentioned a few. I mentioned Franzi, who does some coding questions on Twitch. I don't know if she's still doing it, but I'm sure there's interest. She would get back into it. Chloe Condon, who's kind of doing lots of interesting tech projects. In terms of LGBTQ people, there is this cool project, Kikipedia, and it's kind of just like a drag drag show like website aggregator, so it kind of lists all the shows in different areas and kind of tweets about them. That's like really one of the few tech, like LGBTQ tech projects I can think of. I know there are a lot of like LGBT tech meetups. There's Out in Tech, which we have in New York, and it's in a few other cities. A friend of mine's recently started doing this meetup QX, which is like queer UX and tech. And they've done a few events. They did one at OkCupid, where they had like the CTO or CEO of Scruff, someone from OkCupid, someone from Tinder. But yeah, it's like I think there's a lot of events, but I think I'd love to see more like how can we like get the tech and the LGBTQ stuff like combined a little bit better. It's like I see a lot of happy hours for LGBTQ people in tech, and not a lot of like hackathons. So like have that there's Pride Hacks here. I think that's so cool. And if we can get that in New York, let me know. Now Phil and I are gonna talk.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we're even like, oh, like who's doing stuff? I'm like, that is part of the lack of representation, right? Because it's not like these queer people in tech don't exist, right? Like we exist, we're there, we're doing stuff.
There's Tim Cook, he's doing Apple,
But most are flying a little under the radar. So I think we can do what we should do what we can to lift those voices up. So thank you so much, and I'm gonna now open the floor to questions. So if you got any questions for Anna, we got a mic for you. You just raise your hand.
So thank you so much. Also,
you're so welcome.
Great first time interviewing.
Oh, thank you. Loved it.
And Edie changed jackets so we kind of match.
I
went a little bit more like sequin and glamour that I brought, but
I didn't
it's
know
good energy.
what Anna was gonna wear, so I brought multiple outfits tonight.
I love it.
So that we could coordinate. And then when we met up, I was like, okay, I know what's gonna work out. So yeah. Anyway, sorry. Back to you all. Questions.
Amazing. So what we're gonna take a couple of questions, and then we're gonna call out the rest of our panelists to come on stage. So first question.
I was just wondering, like, when did you come out to your team about being analytical, and how did they take it?
In like February, that's when I put out my first video. And I would say like 99% of them were like very supportive. I think drag can be kind of a sensitive topic, especially for some like trans people. So there was kind of like a lot of discussion around that. But it was really good to know that I had a lot of other support from my teammates.
Being diverse and inclusive and everything is becoming this cool thing right now in companies. And I feel like, I don't know how to explain, but how do you not feel used just because they want to put on this front thing that, well, we have a very diverse team and we're very open, versus actually, getting the job and ending up in a diverse team, no matter the reason. And what made me think of this is you mentioning Google tweeting about, you and having this member being, having this channel, etc. How do you get comfortable about this?
I think one of the things to think about is looking at like what are like a company's policies around like LGBTQ people, and like how does the company support them? So I know like Google has a ton of really good policies for LGBTQ families, for trans people wanting to transition, and it's not a perfect company. I mean, it's a huge company, but like all of these efforts, like the article that was written about me, like the tweets that are made, it's like it obviously comes across as like this is what Google is doing, but it's all kind of coming up from individual employees. It's like, this is not a project I'm doing for work. This is me in my spare time, like spending hours and hours putting work together to create like a space for like queer tech people. And it's like I kind of want to get that shared so other people can kind of see that.
I'll be just looking for, you know, a diverse team, but then getting there and realizing, because this is actually something that happened,
Okay.
just realizing that they try to make sure that they can say they have a lot of diversity.
So yeah, I think it's like looking at their policies, looking at who their employees are. Like, I mean, if it's a 3-person company, that might be a little hard to like know where it's going to go in the next 30 people. But if it's a 30-person company, you can probably start to get an idea of who are the types of people they're hiring. Ideally, in your interview process, you should have a moment where you're able to talk to someone maybe similar to you and ask them questions about what it is like to work there and try to get a candid response. I use like Glassdoor when I was looking for jobs to kind of see what are the reviews of this company. There's an app Blind where a lot of people will post just different reviews of their company or like lots of different information. So really like dig into that company if it's something you're concerned about. Maybe bring up a few things like if you are like queer LGBTQ, you could bring up, oh, what are your policies around like, I don't know, like LGBTQ families or something. Even if it's not something you're thinking about right now, it's like down the line, that's something you want to think about and you want to know, oh, that's baked in. They're a supportive company through and through. Like, I know that's something I can move forward with. Or you could talk about, like in the interview process, I think it's helpful to bring it up. Like, oh, I'm involved in this QueerTech meetup. Is that something I could do like as part of my job here and bring that in? Or like, I want to go to Grace Hopper. Is that something you would support? Or other kind of different conferences. But yeah, there's really no way to know once you're there. It's just do a lot of research. And that's kind of like one of these things where it's just like another thing you have to think about as like someone queer in tech. It's like, yeah, there are a ton of companies that are really supportive and have great policies. But there's always something like in the back of your head where it's like, oh, is it really going to be that supportive? Is this company, am I taking this risk? And like even as acceptance grows and grows, it's like there's just still all these things that we have to think about.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in the tech world, it's like, it's complicated because a lot of us are like, oh, do we want to work for these companies? Like these like really controversial companies, you know, like I know a lot of friends who are very conflicted where they're just like, I don't want to work for this company because of this thing they did here. I don't want to work for this company because they sell this or like whatever, you know? And I think that's like it's like, oh, they might have a really good LGBT policy, but then they also like are okay with this other thing that I'm like not really comfortable with. So it's kind of hard in the tech world because you're dealing with a lot of like really big
It's hard in the
companies.
world.
Yeah, it's hard in the world. I'm kind of trying to keep it like relevant to the people here, but yes, I agree. Like with any job, and usually for me, like I look at what are the values of a company, which I think should be listed, like it should be available. You know, like I'm like, what are the values of the company? And then if I get an interview with the company, I want to ask them like, what are you doing physically, like tangibly to meet these values? Like I want to know, you know? And usually you can tell by their answers, like
and you can look at the like, HRC index, the Human Rights Campaign, they do like an index each year about like how like different metrics that are for LGBTQ people. So that's like another thing.
Or like doing some digging online, like you said, finding people who've maybe worked there before and like seeing if you can get a little bit of insight. But it is very hard because you're right, like inclusion, diversity, whatever, it's very in right now. I should know I get asked to do like a training every week and I have to be like, no, don't do that anymore. But it's because like it's not enough, right? Like I think that's a great first step, but a lot of people worry that it's just like a way to be like, oh, we did this thing and now we don't have to do anymore, right? But the training is just the first step for the rest of the rest of the work.
Yeah,
absolutely. So give it up to Analytica and Eddie This was really
Thank you.
great.
Great, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So I'm just going to ask our panel to introduce themselves to the audience, if that's okay. So your name and maybe, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Chantal Streeting, and I'm the education manager at LightHouse Labs. My pronouns are she, they, her.
Hi, I'm Ricky. I graduated from the bootcamp from Lighthouse like 2 years ago. I've been teaching myself to code since I was like 16, and I taught myself to read on the computer. My pronouns are they, them, and yeah.
Hi, my name's Andrea. Use she, her. I graduated from LightHouse Labs last summer, a little over a year ago, so I've been working in the industry since then. Conversely, I didn't have any experience prior to, so it was a whole new thing for me, and yeah.
Great, thanks. So I thought, Chantal, we could just start with you if you want to maybe, like I'm sure everyone here knows LightHouse Labs, but let's just, make sure. And so maybe just give us a quick rundown. And also, could you tell us a little bit about these scholarships that we've all heard a little bit about?
Yes, absolutely. So a little bit about me. I did about 10 years of post-secondary education between the biomedical sciences, business, psychology, general arts, slowly dropping out. And then I went to work as a graphic designer, some skills that I self-taught, working for the university newspaper. And while I was working, I noticed that I was, I guess, the on-site tech support when tech support wasn't around. And so I just found that I had an ease and a natural ability to work in technology. And I thought, hey, if I'm already doing this already and I'm not enjoying my job, maybe I should make the leap and switch to a tech, some studies in tech. So I did that. I completed an advanced diploma in computer science at Algonquin College in Ottawa. And combining that with my design skills, I was able to freelance for 7 or 8 years, and I feel very fortunate to do that, to have been able to do that. And I've since then joined the LightHouse Labs crew for the opportunity to do some work that matters instead of being at the mercy of my clients. I'm helping people grow. So I just wanted to give you a little context about me. And in an education manager role, I'm I guess a guidance counselor meets customer success. I'm your cheerleader in a boot camp program or in a part-time program with us. I'm your worst enemy. If you're not doing well, you're going to hear about it from me. So that's a little bit about my role at LightHouse Labs. And so LightHouse Labs provides, it's, I guess, first and foremost, a coding bootcamp, a full-stack web development bootcamp, as well as we offer some intro to JavaScript and intro to web design programs. So yeah, LightHouse Labs is a bit of an alternative form of education, a fast track to perhaps a career change. It's a 12-week full-time intensive program. I say it's more than full-time because it's 9, we encourage our students to be in our spaces for 9 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week. So yeah, it's quite the intensive program. So that's a little bit about myself and LightHouse Labs. And yeah, we have this scholarship program, and I brought my paper here because my communications team is a lot more eloquent than I am, and I think this is an important thing to announce. So earlier this year, LightHouse Labs committed $150,000 to our student scholarship program. Our modest goal, to reduce barriers for underrepresented groups in the tech industry. We're very proud of the impact the scholarship has made so far. We've awarded 7 Women in Tech scholarships and 2 Breaking Barriers scholarships, amounting to $22,000 in awarded scholarship funds. Another nearly $40,000 in scholarships were awarded in partnership with First Nations Technology Council and other community partners. So now we're really pleased to be expanding the vision with the launch of a new and improved scholarship program. Our scholarships will continue to be merit-based and designed to benefit underrepresented groups in tech. But we're refining our selection process to better enable self-identification for applicants. With 3 to 5 scholarships each month for the remainder of 2019, we want to make sure that these scholarships get to the people that need them. So what we've learned so far with the scholarship program is that, well, at Lighthouse, we treat everything we do as a work in progress. We constantly seek feedback from stakeholders so we can improve on our initial approaches to deliver the best products and services to our community. This is the philosophy we apply to our new curriculum update. We've used the same ethos to guide us through the changes of our scholarship program. The initial goal of our scholarship program was to tackle underrepresentation in tech by removing financial barriers for some students and encouraging them to act as role models to their communities through their careers in tech, empowering others to pursue similar career paths. 6 months ago, we approached the launch of this program with the knowledge that there was so much more to learn about underrepresentation and our role in addressing it. While we did our research, we never considered ourselves experts on this complex topic, and we've tried to maintain a position where we listen more than we speak. Something became clear to us in the first 6 months of the scholarship program. By offering our scholarships to specific categories of underrepresented groups, we were limiting the scope of the impact our program could achieve. Furthermore, we acknowledge that identity is complex. Is it ever? And that the categories we set forward didn't necessarily capture the full picture of how applicants viewed themselves. It also didn't account for the more nuanced experiences different applicants might have based on the intersection of different identities. As a company, we regrouped to think more deeply about these questions. Eventually, we came to the conclusion that it shouldn't just be up to Lighthouse to decide which groups are underrepresented and deserving of a scholarship. It is the students themselves who are best equipped to make the call. So when I left the consulting world, I chose to work with a company that works hard at, they walk the talk. And so that's a little bit about Lighthouse and our scholarship program. Thank you for listening to that. That was a bit long.
And if anyone here is interested or knows somebody who's interested, can they find that information on your website?
Yes, we're proud to flaunt it. So that's a little bit about the scholarship program, but I know that LightHouse Labs also has a partnership with Desjardins. So as in terms of like barriers for access to careers in tech, our partnership, the financial aspect is always is often a worry of a lot of different people. And we do have a partnership with Desjardins to allow students, give them access to loans that cover the cost of tuition and not having to pay back up until 4 months after graduation.
Awesome, thank you. And now I have a question for the I guess like recent and not so recent grads. If you want to maybe, tell us a little bit about your experience. And I'm particularly interested in how you were feeling upon graduating. Were you nervous to enter the tech world as LGBTQ people? And maybe how has that actually been? How has accessing the job force been thus far?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, there's some anxiety that comes along with entering any new environment. As a trans person, speaking as a trans person myself, any kind of unknown can be a bit intimidating. And then especially when you kind of layer on the fact that it's no secret that the tech industry isn't exactly diverse, not always welcoming if you base yourself on, I think what was mentioned earlier, Facebook, YouTube comments, things like that. It was a matter of trying to overcome a lot of imposter syndrome and feeling like, is this really the place for me? Do I belong? Are people really going to fully accept me here? And not just, so kind of compounded with the fact that coming out of a non-traditional sort of education in tech, those two aspects kind of going into it were definitely very like nerve-wracking. Luckily, it was not such a rough process at the end of the day, but I think it's definitely something that, and of course, it wasn't always smooth. Once you're in the industry, there's a lot of stuff to get that you run up against that you kind of have to deal with on a pretty frequent basis. But yeah, so the anxiety was there, but I think that luckily, in terms of being able to be rooted and confident in my skills, Lighthouse did give me that. So there was that to fall back on and be like, no, I do know what I'm doing. I could always think back on how far I'd come, just in the short time that, doing the bootcamp and everything. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, so I graduated 2 years ago, and I think I'm kind of an exception in the sense that I'm a snowflake. I actually got a job right after the boot camp, and then that was a short-term contract, and then ended up going back to my old work, which wasn't really the healthiest choice for me. And I think I wanted to actually go and leave that job to find more work elsewhere, but I actually felt, and you were talking about it earlier with Anna regarding dropping out of a computer science program. I only have a high school degree. I've done a bunch of post-secondary, but I left and was kind of worried that I'm not going to be able to find another job. And that was kind of stressful for me because someone's going to look at it and be like, oh, it's just a boot camp. You don't have the skills. But after, I guess, kind of putting myself out there, finally leaving that job, I ended up feeling a lot more confident in my skills after working for other employers who were more, let's say, they offered more mentorship, or they offered more comfort in like an appreciation of my skills, and valued me. So I think through that I was able to grow a bit more. But yeah, it definitely was like coming out. I was a bit nervous that I wouldn't end up finding anything, but.
And I mean, I'm glad to hear that, even though there were like trepidations and like some challenges, that you managed to like overcome that. And I'm like also not that surprised, because queer people are amazing and are overcoming challenges all the time and are really, really resilient. And I guess, I wonder, do you have any tips that you would want to share, with people in the room who maybe are like, or to allies or to businesses, like what would you like to see people doing and businesses doing to make that process better for LGBT people? And also when you're working there too, not just getting the job, but once you have the job as well.
Yeah, so I guess from the aspect of what would I like to see in the industry a lot more of, I guess. So it took me a little while to find a job after boot camp, and that was kind of spotted with a few interviews that were pretty intense experiences, and in which I only saw a side of the company that I didn't feel fully like I could really be a full part of. So these really intense experiences of sitting in a room with 3 men who have decades of experience who are just grilling you on your knowledge or whatever, it can be really stressful. And looking around and not seeing anyone that you feel like you can relate to or lean on, or feel like you have any kind of support there, it feels very intimidating, and it feels like designed for you to kind of come into really aggressively and confidently. And if you don't necessarily have that confidence, but you do have the skill set, can throw you off and ruin your chance of, your opportunity of a good job or career. So that's one thing that I think is an easy thing for employers to do, is to just have a diverse group of people there in the room interviewing people, and to have a focus on, less on coming in and just wanting to crank it out and just get it done as quickly as possible, and are you good, are you bad, next, whatever, just sit there and talk to people and actually feel like you can get comfortable in a space. Another thing that's on my mind a lot is just that, so my company, just like any other given company in the tech industry, has a diversity problem, and people are aware of it, but what comes up a lot in terms of management is, we don't really know what to do about it, because it's not like we don't want to hire people who represent diverse groups. It's just that these people don't apply, and it's that really kind of always gets me, because it's well, then you're doing something wrong, right? If people don't know that they can come here and be safe here and work here, then you're not, you obviously haven't reached out. You haven't made any effort to reach out to people. You're not showing that you're genuinely invested in the idea of diversity. You're just kind of putting it off we'll hire diverse people when they apply, So I think that finding ways to reach out and be involved in community events is a big one, in a way that's, respectful, not going to Pride and waving a giant corporate banner, that kind of thing. It's not really, to me, that kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit, but getting involved where people are, where queer people are, and organizing their own events, and try to kind of find ways to reach out to the community that way. So maybe you organize an event in collaboration with QueerTech or something like that, things like this that are easy ways to reach out and show that you're a welcoming environment, and then also living those values, not just saying that you are and then providing no day-to-day support for people. So a lot of the little things losing old habits, referring to the previously, before I was hired, all male dev team as the boys, this kind of thing, little daily things that kind of rub up on you, rub you the wrong way. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
I have 2 points. I think the first is in response to you were mentioning, sorry, brain fart. You were mentioning talking about these people aren't coming in, and I think part of that is I don't think that in tech all of the ability is your programming experience. A lot of it has to do with interdisciplinary studies, and if you look at a CV and you see, oh, they've only done a year of JavaScript, you look at my CV and you're sexuality studies, arts and culture, some psychology, this person's not going to be good at computers. I think sometimes you need to take in those CVs or take in those people. After you see that CV, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not a good developer. These people are going to have experience in different areas, and that's going to bring in a lot of value for your company. And I think the other thing was in response to the three big burly dudes interviewing. And I remember at one of my old jobs that was the case. It was two big dudes, very intimidating, very pushy, and it's very difficult to if you are also kind of a dude that rough and tumble kind of, that's fine. You're gonna get along just great. But if you're not, it's gonna be very difficult to keep up and to not feel intimidated in that space. And so I think a lot of it has to do with you as someone who's recruiting, as someone who's looking for talent. You need to kind of there needs to be a kind of shift in the way that you communicate with people, and that doesn't mean necessarily tone policing or changing who you are. It just means changing the way that you speak. We all have a very different way of talking about things, and when I speak, it may sound very strange to another person, but yeah, I think yeah.
Honestly, Thank you. And you describing those interviews to me, I'm horrified. I'm like, I would not have survived that. That sounds seriously really horrible. And I think that also it's like this idea of like what type of personality or like behavior is like seen as strong, as smart, as like powerful, and you can be kind of shy and timid and quiet and still be like a complete friggin' genius. You don't have to be like really super aggressive and pushy. And so I think that speaks a little bit to like kind of the pretentious attitude that I see a lot in tech and in tech's hiring processes. So you really brought up some really great points, and I think that's really something to think about. I want to open it to the audience now. So if you have any questions for our panelists.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for sharing all your experiences. Thank you for like pretty much like giving us like opening up a window for people who don't, for instance, get to be in conversation with companies. And you know, like one of the things that I appreciate from this panel is that we get to have a glimpse of what is going on the other side of, you know, people who like with people who consume things or with people who I don't know, who read things on the news or watch things online. We don't really get to know how decisions are made on the other side. So my question is about something that has been mentioned in both panels. I really appreciate what you have said about unrepresented groups. I think there's this idea about who gets to be in the room, who gets to have access, for instance, to these boot camps, or who has to get to even get an interview for these jobs, who even has a chance to have access to these job postings, etc. So I would like to know what your opinion is about these ideas that have been mentioned about diversity, not only in terms of gender identity, but also in terms of race and class. I would like to know, on the one hand, people who, as I said before, people who have the chance to work for these big companies, but also to be in conversation with people who make decisions about who gets to be in the room. I would like to know if you have, on the one hand, your opinion about that, but also what you have personally experienced in terms of, is there any policies that are being designed, for instance, in terms of quotas about, I don't know, like a specific amount of positions that are allocated for instance, queer people, but also queer people of color, BIPOC people, etc. Is there something that you have spotted that is like being actively decided? Is it something that you see only, for instance, in speeches or like in the description of companies? But is it something that you're actually seeing being implemented?
So perhaps I could speak maybe on behalf of Lighthouse Labs, and I do some of the hiring of our mentors, for example, and our lecturers and instructors. And I know that hey, I see a resume and I interview the people, and if, you know, I embrace diversity, and I'm hiring people. I'm not hiring robots, right? You know, we can train people to do the technical stuff, but we want team players, and to be team players that can speak to our students, we want a diverse bunch. So I know that just from being on the hiring side, that I can speak to Lighthouse Labs does that. I guess indirect affirmative action. We're a small team. We're only 40 employees across the country, and 4 of us in Montreal only. So I joined a company that does walk the talk. I identify as queer myself, and I felt that I was joining a safe space. But I'm gonna, while I have the mic, I'm gonna flip things on us. I think it's up to us. Like, we're not there yet. As people in the LGBTQ community and of underrepresented groups, we need to be vocal. We need to stand up. We need to be out loud and proud, because that's what's going to pave the way for the people after us. So, for example, I'm registering people for little fobs to swipe in and swipe out of our system. And when I'm inputting their name, I can only put Mr. or Mrs. into the system. There's only those two options. And so I need to go to our reception area for the building and say, listen, your system needs to be updated. You know, we're 2019 now. You know, see, we're 2019. We're even further than 2018, and yeah, we're not there yet. It's also up to us to be vocal, and I mean, this is why LightHouse Labs is here, is because we're recruiting. We want more people in tech, and we want more queer people in tech to really represent the population. So that would be a little bit my comment on that. I don't know if there's any feedback over here.
Yeah, I thank you for bringing up the concept of quotas, because not to be a downer here, but the truth is that this is something that I've brought up in my work experience, in my workplace. The concept that you know, you shouldn't be afraid of the concept of a quota, because it exists for a reason. It exists in order to counter what is observable in society in terms of access, in terms of opportunities. And so I think that a company committed, this ties back into what can companies do. I think a company genuinely committed to the idea of diversity, who's coming at it from an analysis of, from a class analysis, from an analysis of genuinely being invested in the concept. I think that is a great thing. It's a great opportunity for employers to show that they genuinely care about diversity, and this goes beyond gender as well, to race, etc. So being able to say, we have these applicants, they are of equal skill, but we're going to go with this one over this one because of the fact that we acknowledge that our company is 90% white men and we need to change that. And so that concept scares a lot of people in the industry, I think, because they look around and they go, oh, there's nothing wrong with our company. We love everyone here. Everyone's friendly. No one, you know, nothing goes wrong here. But that's not the point. The point is that you're operating specifically in this industry, in an industry that is massively skewed towards upholding existing structures, and that any company that's genuinely concerned about that should be looking at quotas. But from my experience, it's something that a lot of tech companies have a long way to get used to the idea, but it is something that I'm, you know, shouting about in my little corner. Hopefully, I will be able to find some support and move that along. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Well, I just want to thank you all for being here, and yeah, please, like, I'll be here. You all are okay to stick around and answer some questions. Anna's still here, so you can go say hi. But yeah, thank you all for coming and for being such a great audience. And maybe if we can just give a round of applause for our panelists, that would be great.